You're on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Off the Net Radio Show, show number a lot,
Well, you just told me.
784, with our guest. I cannot believe he's not been on the show. Actually, I can't believe. He's been slippery. We can't get. It's like an eel. We can't. It's like bar of soap.
Is the reason he didn't come on the show, was that on purpose?
I don't know. We're gonna find out. Is there a reason for that? You haven't been on the show?
Yeah, I'm not that hard to email, but apparently for you, it's really hard. It's really hard.
So, as you know, TC, we gave up doing notes many moons ago.
I agree.
A lot of years ago, we used to meet, do notes, get notes.
Remember, I'd write them on a bag.
And so many people wrote on Aptosia Facebook page today, which I posted. I mean,
Can we introduce our guest first?
no, not yet. Here's our notes. Scrabble. Yeah.
How was your Scrabble score?
Did you win?
No.
What word did you use?
You don't.
Okay, now you can introduce our guest.
Zach Friend's our guest tonight. Santa Cruz County Supervisor, District 2, which I have no idea where that goes to and from, but I think it's mainly Aptos. And where's your
I've got you.
where are you out of bounds?
Oh, you got me.
Where
Yeah.
are you? Where's your boundary?
So I start close to across the street here in Capitola, go all the way to Monterey County line on the coastal side, and then, in essence, Cabrillo College up
Yeah.
to the summit and down.
Him?
A lot of,
Yeah, I'm right
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
he's in the hood. He's in the hood.
You're in the hood, so you just told him that story about your illegal fence. That's
No, it's legal now, I found out.
oh, so
Yeah.
it is legal.
I was recording that.
No.
conversation.
So Aptosia people, we have a lot of notes here, a lot of questions from all the people here, but we don't really do notes to do well. So we're
And
just
I'm
gonna
actually-
ad lib it and see how we do.
For sure, and also, if anyone who's watching, I'm gonna, I'm up behind the camera tonight.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a question, you can ask me, and hopefully I can forward that to Zach, and maybe he'll answer it, and maybe he won't. We'll find out.
Okay, what are we doing here? Are you sticking around? What's going on? Your wife's down below. She's in Southern California. You're here. Do you have 1 foot? Let me ask you a question. Simply put, do you have 1 foot out the door, 1 foot on a banana peel?
No, no to both of those, I think. But yeah, we actually were just having this conversation, my wife and I, about this because of like decisions kind of got to be made relatively soon about the future, and I'm still having a lot of fun doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, but she's down there.
I understand.
All
I
right.
mean, they do have planes.
Yes,
I mean,
good.
she's an amazing person that has her own career too.
All
So this
right.
is actually something that I found pretty interesting is how people have judged what she's doing, right? Meaning that
Didn't we read something about her in Lookout? Something even Lookout wrote about her, right?
She's she is the city manager at Coronado. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Yes.
So this is what the thing I actually asked that writer is I said that why are you asking about my future when she goes and does something amazing? Would you be asking her the same thing if I had taken a job in like the Biden administration or something?
Right.
And he said no, and to me I actually viewed that as basically a sexist issue. I mean, she's the first woman in their history and doing amazing stuff, and
Yeah.
we've got aging parents down there that she's helping take care of and a number of other things. And so, I'm obviously super proud of her in that regard, and she comes up, I come down. That's just sort of
How's
how
that
it is.
conversation go? Was that conversation went like, okay, you're going down? How'd the conversation go? And you decided that you guys going
Look, sometimes opportunities choose the timing isn't ideal. Sort of like when do you have a kid or when do you buy a house? There's no right time for all these things. That opportunity came open. Like I said, we've got some parents that aren't young and that live down in that area, and so it was an opportunity for her career to move up, and B, for her to be near family in that way.
Well, and congrats for her to be able to do that and have a career and take care of family.
so-
Somebody with aging parents, I get it. It's I get that.
What's your miles look like on your credit card for flying back and forth?
It's pretty impressive.
It's pretty impressive.
It is.
You got a lot of
pretty
miles?
What do you? Is it Southwest? Where do you go?
I take Alaska.
Well,
I mean,
I
I'm not allowed to brand name, I don't think, but I do. And here's the reason why. I mean, 24. I can't be responsible for 24 hours before something to remember. I got to check in. That's way too beyond my. I mean, for you, I would only want to get to it, but for the rest of me, that's like a lot, right? So, but I don't know that. I actually don't have that many miles because I use them for free flights.
Booking
Yeah,
flights.
for free flights.
When
Or
you're
even
talking
for
about
her coming up.
Southwest, how you got to pay to get into the first 20
Right.
rows.
Oh well.
Yeah.
So I like
So
Alaska.
it works out good. So you're not rushing off down. You're not taking. You're still going to be doing your gig till.
Yeah, look,
how long are you doing this for?
I've got this gig. I mean, I'm in my
Couple more
current.
years,
I'm in
right?
my current term until the beginning of 25, and
There
so
we
I
go,
definitely
yes.
have time on that. But I was saying that we're having that conversation about what's next. And I mean, I've got these things I'm still excited to be working on, like larger project stuff. but
Which are, can we give us three of them? Those three.
So one of the largest projects I've been working on for the last 10 years is the Pajaro River project.
Right.
We secured $480 million. This didn't happen accidentally. This is taking like a lot of work. Of
Right.
course, 18 months too late, right? Because it takes about 18 months to get through this final environmental stuff. But the Pajaro River project still needs somebody to be focusing on it. In essence, actually full.
What happened there? What's got screwed up there that catastrophe happened there?
Well, I think that there is a social injustice issue to how the federal government funds infrastructure projects. Actually, I don't think I know. The way that they calculate flood protection projects is something using a BCR, or benefit cost ratio. So in essence, if you have a $10 million home, the replacement value of that is worth a lot more than if it's a farm worker's
Right.
house or agricultural land. So in rural areas across the country, you actually see that many flood projects have not been built, but in areas like Palo Alto, they actually have. And so I think it's that systemic issue, which we worked with Congressman Panetta to actually shift on the language in the federal government of how they score these things, and it's been a lot of work to do that. So
Right.
we've changed the underlying structure of it, but then we still had to get the funding for it. And then, of course, environmental at the state and federal level, land acquisition. I mean, it's all these things nobody wants to hear, but those are the things that do take a significant amount of time once you secure the money.
Number two?
Just being on the show. I mean, because it took 783 episodes for me.
He's slick.
Welcome to the show. Zach.
And
Welcome to the show.
you know, and finally,
We know.
You're ranking
finally-
now.
yeah, no,
You may be my new guest, Mike. If he screws up, I'm getting him in.
Guest host?
Yeah.
He's quick, huh?
yeah, and I know how to turn the camera on, which you still haven't done.
Which we don't know how to do that.
No, in all seriousness, so the second thing that actually I just spoke up at UC Berkeley Law yesterday about is broadband and the digital divide. I mean, we may think we live in a relatively urban or suburban area. I mean, we're right next to Silicon Valley, but most people in my district have crap internet. They can't access telehealth. They can't submit things to school. So working with the state and federal government, man, we've done a lot. We just secured about $30 million to help with the build out here in our community.
Wow.
So this is real stuff.
Yeah.
But I have to see that element through.
So you're making online stuff easy for people to get online.
Well, let me. I mean,
just
so I think I consider it to be as important as water, electricity, or a road.
be online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it is.
sure.
It should be looked at as a utility. It should
Right.
be looked at in the exact same way. It should be prioritized in the exact same way. I mean, I think that people that are unable to have connectivity view it as important. In fact, actually, there was a national survey that was done just recently that said, "Would you rather be without electricity or be without the internet?" And 70% of the people said they'd rather.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
especially as we have these new generations growing older that have been raised with internet, you know, it becomes detrimental
That's
to
right.
them.
And most kids, I mean, most young people, like that is their only connectivity to the world is through their phones. A lot of it's their social interactions, for better or for worse. I mean, as somebody who has an 8-year-old, I worry about,
Yeah.
you know, those kinds of things. But anyway, I think that we're not really living in a modern kind of competitive component here because we haven't modernized the elements here. And it's because the internet service providers haven't invested here. There's a lot of reasons why we can get into, similar to what happened with the river as to why.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a public financing component that's going to break down those barriers, but we still have to get
And
that
so
right.
essentially there would be open Wi-Fi is what we're looking for?
I think what there would be dark fiber build out that anybody could break in, right? So be it Cruzio or AT&T or whomever. I mean, ideally locals first, but the idea would be having that public infrastructure down so anybody could come in, greatly reducing that cost.
I'm not trying to be flippant here, but like I got a lot of complaints from Facebook about the roads in Aptos, right around where we all hang out.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there's potholes. There's potholes. I got potholes in my street, but something like the Pajaro River project is far more important. Wouldn't you say?
I mean, here's
This is
yeah. So I think that there's two things, right? I think that elected officials are not rewarded for fixing a road; they're rewarded for filling a pothole because there's an immediacy thing. So if you
well,
ignore
everybody there wants you repave the whole of Aptos, the whole thing.
well, but
pretty much.
But no, what I'm saying is that decisions are made that are very short nature because people demand immediate response to something. I got a pothole right in front of me. I got a barking dog right here. I need an immediate response. But there isn't a space that's ever given for long-term projects, which I think one of the reasons why Pajaro didn't get done was because there's no political incentive for somebody to own that space, because no one's voting for someone because you spent 10 years to secure $480 million. They're voting for you because they said, my road looks like crap. You were able to get that done faster than not, right?
Right.
And so most people aren't looking at, like, what's the underlying funding components of it? Why is this road being done and not that road, or whatever it may be? What are the drainage issues or these long-term kind of problems with it? So I don't disagree. I mean, I live on a road in Aptos that's actually deemed failed by its rating standard. And so my neighbor's kind of, I guess, like the contractor's home never gets done, like my own road is probably last on the list. But I get it, but I'm not willing to say what's more important, because to the person living on that road, that might be a heck of a lot more important to them than the river. I'm just saying that from my perspective as an elected official, I like working on the macro level issues that no one else is tackling, so that whoever is in this seat next, whoever grows up in this community next, they have a different trajectory than what I was faced with when I came in. I think that's what we should do.
What was the biggest issue what was the biggest issue for you when you came in? And what is the biggest issue? How's that changed, and what's the biggest issue for you now?
Yeah, it's the structural funding issue at the county. So I came in right after the Great Recession. So, I mean, we were down 25% on jobs. I mean, a lot of people were still in furloughs or whatever it may be. You know, a lot of businesses had closed down. So it was just building back up.
That's how I met him.
Mm-hmm. It was just building back up this element of that. And there are a lot of things to that. One of them is, I mean, you hear about the planning department, people's frustration with it, but I mean, it was kind of a non-business friendly world in that regard. Housing, we've definitely prioritized sort of trees over people within the community, and is there a way to kind of do both, I think is a question. But there's a polarizing environment. I think Santa Cruz County isn't unique in that regard, where people they take a side, you know, and those kinds of things, and don't really look at the balance on that. So when I first came in, I think a lot of it was just building back up from all these cuts.
Right.
We didn't even have a parks department. It had actually been eliminated. Mm-hmm. I mean, to put it in perspective.
Was there a parks department?
It was located under, at the time was a redevelopment department. I mean, it had been eliminated as a standalone department, and staff had been obliterated, positionally speaking. And so a lot of it was just the rebuild out of that and all of the chess pieces that were necessary to stabilize.
Yeah. When we just had those winter storms, what did you have to? What was the hardest thing for you to tackle? Because there was a lot of that whole thing there at Seacliff Beach, where the motorhomes used to park, and of course all the damage to the homes right there. What was the hardest thing for you to tackle?
Well, the hardest thing is what happened in Popero, right? Which technically wasn't on our side of the county, but you know, it's just when you look at two disadvantaged communities in Watsonville and Popero, you think about, there's portions of my district in Watsonville where I've gone door to door and seen 20 some odd people living in a home.
Right.
They don't have a voice in this process, and so to me that was the hardest part of the storm damage. Also the fact that we knew it was going to, I mean, we were literally screaming from rooftops to get somebody to listen, and then it happens, then everybody cares. It's sort of an interesting phenomenon about, you can get resources when there's a disaster, but you don't get resources to prevent. But a second part of this is that we still hadn't built out of the damages done in the 2017 storms. I still had $140 million worth of damage, mostly in my district, to roads in 2017, of which some of this is going to sound political, but because of the delays and denials by the Trump administration, we couldn't actually get the funding in for a long time. So it took a long time. So some of those roads are still down, Trout Gulch, other areas, and then more came down in this. And so they lose total faith, I mean, in me, right? I mean, I'm a representative of the government, unable to rebuild in that 5-year, 6-year period. Then it happens again. They're scared about being totally cut off, emergency services, etc.
Yeah.
One of the advantages of the good thing is having the state and federal relationships, at least, that we've built, or I've built, able to bring the president out, able to bring the governor out, and so we got a lot of attention and resources early on, and I think the rebuild this time is going better than what happened in 17.
DC, why don't you stand right here? Because we want to talk about the train. We want to talk about the train, and you're involved in it. But
one of the things I just wanted to thank you for was, I know you were involved in getting that Seacliff skate park permitted and constructed, and it's an amazing resource for the community down there. And I know I was there for the opening when you spoke, and I just wanted to thank you for that, because that's one of the small victories that maybe get overlooked. But there was never really a skateboard facility in that part of our community.
Right.
And it really, I know as a business owner that supports skateboarding, that kids are being outdoors and being healthy because of that facility.
Right.
And I don't think there's been any problems there. I mean, I know maybe there was some graffiti or something, but overall, that's an amazing, great little addition to our community. So thank you for that.
May I talk about that just for a second?
Absolutely.
So as you know, I mean, the attempt was to build that in Capitola, and that kind of fell apart. And I reached out to Rich and said, "What about at Seacliff Park? I mean, there was technically a skate feature that had been part of the master plan, and understandably, there was concern that it was going to go through the same issues on the legal side and community opposition. And we did a lot of work on the back end to make sure that that wasn't the case. Now, to be fair, there is opposition to skate parks coming in next to housing. People don't like the noise or afraid of the kids that they think are going to be there. There have been a handful of issues, is not unsurprising when you have a bunch of teenagers hanging out. But at the end of the day, like I've said to people, would you rather have them be there and doing something that they're going to do anyway on your property, quite frankly, or would you want and have it be much more controlled and whatever? And we ended up building what I thought was an absolutely beautiful thing. It wasn't easy. I mean, this was not an easy process, but we got it through. It seemed seamless, I think, to the outside, and now it's used all the time. And I brought my little guy over there. He doesn't skate. I mean, he's not so little anymore, 8. But there is this deference during the mid-afternoon to young kids having their opportunity to do it before the older kids kind of take over. And I think it's almost got its own governing rules that I think is a pretty cool thing.
Well, it worked out great, and it's used because there's nothing really around it. I mean, obviously we have McGregor pretty close by, but it's a nice addition to our skateboarding community, and I just wanted to thank you for that. Getting back to what we talked about with the train deal, I know that was a huge part of your last, like,
it was confusing.
4 years.
We talked about this yesterday. It was confusing. Yes on, it was no or yes on no, and yes. And what was yes and no? It was highly
actually
confusing.
have spent some time talking to people about their recollection of the election. And they honestly, they don't even know what they voted for because of the way that the initiative was written on the ballot.
Okay.
And for me, for hindsight on that, I don't care what side you're on, whether you want a rail or whether you want a trail. It was so weird that a no vote was a yes for a train, and that was so confusing. I have a painter in my house today. And he's like, "Oh, you live on the train tracks?" I'm like, "Yeah." I asked him, "What did you vote?" He goes, "I voted no because I didn't want a train." I'm like, "Dude, you're one of those guys that 70% voted for the train." Well, probably, I don't know what the number is, who was totally confused by the ballot. And maybe you can inject in that a little bit, because I thought it was a really interesting way. Whoever wrote that, in hindsight, for me personally, I would have said, yes, get the train, no, get the trail.
So a couple things here. One, I'm going to be careful on the legal side because I live right next to the tracks, and so I'm technically conflicted out.
And you recused yourself.
I had to. I'm legally required to recuse myself.
Because you live next to the tracks?
So if you have if the FPPC, so the State Federal Political Whatever Practices Commission determines that you have a $2,000 material interest in something, which is a pretty broad, I think, thing. But at the end of the day, I live like 150, 200 feet from the tracks. And it used to be that if you lived within 500 feet of a decision, it was just cut and dry. You couldn't do it. And then they changed this $2,000 material interest. So you have to write a letter. Their lawyers write you back. They say you have to recuse from all actions on it. So I can't speak to the merits of it. But to your point, it was a community organization that got the signatures. And I think what the ultimate idea was to try and settle what's probably unsettleable, because people are so retrenched into camps, and like I mentioned to you, I think it was when we were first walking in, it struck me almost like an abortion discussion. I mean, like there was like a religious zeal to the positions and the idea of like, well, can you see my side? No, like there's either you were open to one thing or you weren't open to another thing. And I will say that if somebody is confused, I find just from a political standpoint, if they're confused about a vote, they tend to vote for no change, because they're afraid of what the change will be, which is understandable. You want to always maintain options open. People prefer options over less options, or more options over less options. Or as I like to say, you give an elected official an A or B choice, and they will vote option C every time. Like they will literally create a third option to maintain the options. I think in some respects that's what was reflected here in the community, is that whether or not people understood the ballot measure that could have been part of it, there was just this sense of, I'm not ready to make that final of a decision at this point, and so we want to maintain the possibility of
Did
options.
you mention earlier about who owns what on where the railway's currently running through?
Yeah, we don't even know. I mean,
we don't even know.
I mean, what I'm saying is that I mean, when you go down, I mean, most people haven't had surveys
through
done.
Aptos right there, that corridor, right, the old edge in the village. Who owns what there? That thing's going right through the center of town.
Oh, well, I mean, so some of it is owned by the rail, but some of it is owned by the adjacent businesses, right? And some of it comes into the county right away in some small parts. But there are homes that have some right into the right of way, and so just the construction complexities on land acquisition are going to be pretty immense, irrespective of what ends up happening on that line.
Well, I don't know if you can answer this because you recuse yourself, but will we ever see a commuting rail system in Santa Cruz County?
I mean, I actually don't know. I mean, irrespective of recusal or not, I mean, I think that's a question that would be very difficult for anybody to actually answer.
It's complicated.
I mean, I grew up with trains. So we talked about TC. You know, I grew up with trains, been living in England. And it's part of the the infrastructure. You know, and you've got a lot of trains, and you have a lot of tubes, and you've got a lot of ways to get around. It's tough to build infrastructure, a train system, and if it's not already here. What we have is one railway line.
Well, what you're
we have
talking about was built in like the 30s and 20s and 10s.
Yeah, we have one railway line here.
Ours was designed to move freight. It wasn't designed to move people. And people corridors usually have two freight lines or two trains.
What do you want?
You should have been advocating for a tube, man.
For
the tube.
You got to advocate for you get hook up with Elon Musk and you get a Hyperloop Santa Cruz style, dude. Right?
Now we're thinking.
And then you could skate.
See, this is why we didn't invite you on the show earlier because you're smarter than him and I.
Dude, that's the case. That's a low bar around here.
It is low.
Well, and what's funny what we're talking about is that is the future of cars running 2 inches off each other's bumper.
Right. That is right.
You know, and that's whether anyone wants to agree or not, that's the future of our transportation, is cars will drive themselves and they'll be 2 inches away from the car in front of you. And they'll all slow down at the same time, and that's just how it's going to be. So I don't know if what our goal is with the rail trail is current with how technology is going. And I said to you a little earlier, I'm shocked at the growth of electric personal vehicles in this town.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably shocking. Now, are kids going to die left and right in the streets?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because they have
no helmet.
There's these new Saran. They don't have pedals. They do like ones that look like motorcycles. You see the guys riding?
Oh, no.
They go like 50 miles an hour. And there's like 12-year-olds with these things.
No.
You know, it's incredible. But the future, I think, will be small personal electric vehicles in Santa Cruz County, is what I think.
So to the point earlier about broadband, so the underpinning, you'll need some sort of high-speed network for those vehicles to be able to operate that, right? As we move into more automation, then so I look at broadband as basically like the new road network. I don't know what will happen with it. I'm agnostic to that, but I know that it needs to be built in order for the future set of technologies to happen.
Right.
I agree. Totally agree. And it'll be interesting to see. And I do agree with you because I know there's the money's not even there for this project currently for the future. We've secured the right-of-way if it happens, but something will happen, I think, on it.
So you got the gig to what, 2025?
Yeah, unless you're going to start a recall against me. Is that what you're announcing?
I mean, I'd rather go.
Is that why we're here?
I think I'd rather have a ring now.
Signatures?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Let me know where I sign. Yeah.
But there's people lined up. There's people lined up out there. They want your gig.
It's a good gig.
Right?
Yeah, it's good. I'm not going to say it's easy. I mean, it's a hard gig. But I mean, I think it would be easier if I represented the cities only. I mean, I think that those who just represent the incorporated areas just have less things to manage because, like, the city of Watsonville handles most of the issues, roads, cops, and et cetera. City of Santa Cruz handles most. But for Supervisor Koenig, myself, and Supervisor McPherson, where it's basically all unincorporated, we are it for every single issue. Now, with that said, when I worked in Congress, one of the people I worked for was Congressman Farr, before Congressman Panetta.
Yeah.
And I was in his office once, and he just randomly said that the best job he'd ever have was county supervisor. He'd been a county supervisor, a state assembly member, and a congressman. At the time, it didn't really register to me what he was getting at, but he would talk about it only took 3 votes to get stuff done. It was apolitical. You had to maintain these relationships with your colleagues. and you went home at night, and I actually think that I've told him this since, he's right. This is a really important job in the unincorporated area, no question about it. It's a meaningful job where you can literally say to people you're doing something. I mean, they may not agree, actually. They might think that you're doing something in meaning that they don't agree with. But you do come home at night. You have to maintain relationships with your colleagues. You don't feel the same way in the state or federal level.
Right.
Much more tribal, So I'm not surprised that people are interested in it. I think that the more people that are, the better people that are in this role, the better.
You're the chairperson, right, for the supervisors?
Yeah, my number got pulled. Yeah.
Is that how it works?
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, it's rotate. I mean, I want to make it seem like that I was like exalted. See how I stood up a little tall?
I saw that.
No, but at the end of the day, it was just literally my turn. So
yeah.
And you get a fancy gavel?
They put it right next to me. And I don't use it.
What happens? You get to work in the morning. There's 10 things you want to take care of. There's a cat in a tree. There's a pothole. There is something else that's wrong with the street. There's a curb that's fallen over.
Right.
Fences and fence full. What do you tackle first?
Dude,
these are small shit right here. Would you just go off to the side and you tackle the big problem?
No, and this time you'd help the cat out. I mean, people care more about animals. I tell you what, like, I mean, if you had said there was a kid lost or a cat, I mean, there goes the cat. So, I mean, I know for my own political safety here. Well, look, I think that one of the things that I say to my team, I've got a mighty team of 2 with me, that you have to determine the difference between what's urgent and what's important, because they're not always the exact same thing. I want to work toward what's important all the time. Sometimes there are things that are urgent that you have the space to do, and sometimes that item is really urgent to the individual that's calling you or contacting you, but in the scheme of things, it really isn't. But that's not a discount to their viewpoint of it. Their world might be such that the most important thing is whatever it is that you just mentioned, in that regard. I will say that during times of disaster, that's when people do give you the most space. I mean, during the storms and the damage, people would reach out to you with something that had happened, like some of their road had collapsed, but they still had one lane, and usually the email would start with, "This happened, but I understand that you've got these other pressing issues." So it's a really interesting mindset. Post-disaster, though, people maybe are just more focused on the urgent.
Put a piece of paper in your pocket, right? Dave Valley Road, a pothole. Take care of it.
Is there a big pothole on
Dave Valley? Oh, shit.
What?
You could lose a submarine in there. That's no pun intended.
Getting back to your Congressman, Jimmy Panetta, how is it working with Jimmy? Is he a good team partner?
That's great. I mean, he is so accessible. And the first thing that he and I talked about when he was running, he said, "What's the most important issue to you?" And I said, "The river, actually." And I said, "Look, your dad worked on this. Your dad worked on this, and this is a thing that hasn't been completed, and he has been unquestionably the strongest federal voice we've had on that. And it took us a local, state, and federal people to just nonstop it. He's been great. I mean, I could pick up the phone and call him at any time, and he'll get back to me as quickly as possible to help us out.
Well, we've had him on the show.
But he doesn't get back to us that quick.
Yeah, well, apparently, according to him, multiple times. Neil said before
multiple
I got asked.
Multiple times.
He seems like that, though.
Yeah,
he
totally.
Seems like he wants to be in the dirt, and he wants to tackle projects and be in the front line.
I agree.
And as I've become better acquainted with Jimmy and watching him, I'm impressed and happy that he's our congressman.
I agree.
Because he seems to want to help the people. And going back to Pajaro, he's really proud of the fact that he was able to help secure that funding. Yeah. And then also the Capitola Wharf, too.
That's right.
He got some money for the wharf as well, which I'm sure you were involved with.
Yeah, I was, but I gotta say, I just laugh because the poor guy got it right before the thing. I know. So now I literally had to make that call to him and say, so we need an extra couple million. Yeah. I know I told you this amount of million, but he understood. I mean, he gets it. That's part of the deal. I mean, that's actually a good question on both Seacliff and I know Capitola is definitely rebuilding theirs. Seacliff has not made the determination. The state has not made the determination. But I mean, since the creation of that park over 100 years ago, this has happened repeatedly, right? These major, and so the question is, how do you rebuild it in a way that can actually withstand something? You don't want to put 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars into something just to have it destroyed again. And also, people get really caught up in nostalgia, but are the things that you've had for the last 100 years what you want for the next 100 years as far as amenities in that area, or should we think about other things? And that's all part of of the process happening at the state level. The federal, at the community level at Capitola, they're just going to functionally they're rebuilding, right? And they're going to change the amenities on the actual wharf itself. But it is a valid question to ask. I mean, are we just going to be here again in 5, 7, or 15 years?
There's going to be another storm. There'll be another one.
And there's also the seas are going lower.
Correct.
You know, and so that as well could present a problem down the road. But it's such a traditional thing. You know, it goes back to what tugs at your heart.
Yeah.
Being local here in Capitola, that wharf is symbolic and so important to so many people.
Yeah.
And it's great that you guys secured the money to do that. I heard it's up like almost $8 million maybe now.
Yeah. I mean, they've been doing a great job. The city's been doing a great job in not just its advocacy, but applying for funding. But they've had really good support at the state and federal level, which is nice.
So, do you rush permits for that? Is that something that you have seen?
That is, yeah. So it all depends upon what the design's going to be. Are they building like for like? I mean, my understanding in speaking with the Coastal Commission is I don't think that they're going to be really standing in the way. It's a coastal access point, unquestionably. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have any great environmental damage associated with its construction. And the things that they're talking about of improving the fishing access, which brings in a lot of low-income folks, you know, it's a great way to access the sea. Improving the ADA components of the wharf, having more youth-oriented components on the wharf. I mean, that's just like the Coastal Act 101. I mean, allowing people to access the ocean or the bay in a unique way.
And
so
the historical significance of it as well.
True.
It's been there forever.
So I'm your wife, right? The conversation goes like this.
You do not look the same.
I know.
Trust me.
Honey, it's 2025. Your gig's up. Now what are you going to do? You're going to what are you going to go politically? What's the next step?
Are we announcing a Senate run or something?
What are we doing?
No. No, I mean, I know. I mean, this is. Can you imagine? I mean, seriously, like, I mean,
I know you're not going to. You're not going to get in a plane every week like Jimmy does, but.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, it seems. I mean, first off, I'm grateful that he does.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm grateful for our state folks, but it does seem. I mean, as somebody who's there all the time, I'm in DC, I'm in Sacramento all the time. It does seem like you're allowed. I mean, they're kind of allowed one issue, two issues that they can really own, and then it's all party based. And you're raising money for the party, and you're raising money for the leadership, and then there's the inter-party leadership. I don't think about any of these things, right? I don't want to think about any of this. I don't care about any of the. Nobody watching cares about any of those things, right? Mm-hmm. But that is a large part of the life of a state or federal legislator. That doesn't seem to me to be the most effective use of my time. So I would prefer to stay at the local level. If there was another way in public service outside of elected life that I felt that I could make a difference, I'd be open to that.
How did it start for you? How did you start off by that you wanted to be in politics? How old were you?
I was pretty young when I decided that I wanted to be involved in the policy space, not necessarily the political space. There was a library in my community that was slated to close, and I asked my mom, you know, what do you do?
How were you then?
I was in 4th grade. Yeah. And she said to me, well, you should write your city council member. She just she since told me that this was like a throwaway line, but I looked in the phone book. people watching, they know what a phone book is. Right. Like my kid thinks that this camera you've got, that as in the phone, is a camera. He doesn't even know what a camera is. So I wrote her. Her name was Judy McCarty. I mean, I still remember, right? And I wrote her a letter, pencil and everything. She contacted my mom. They ended up holding an event. And now, I was kind of used for a political stunt. But I mean, at my school, my elementary school, and long story short, they ended up not closing the library down. Now, it wasn't like me, but I was like a prop for it. And I thought, this is like really cool that you can fight for something, you know, whatever.
And change it.
That may be. But I got involved then over time in college and grad school, and I lived in D.C., and I worked in Capitol Hill. I worked in the White House. And so I didn't mind being on the policy side, but I wasn't interested in running for office. Those are two very different worlds. And I think that you can make an I don't think people recognize how big of a difference you can make when you work within it as opposed to necessarily having to be the person.
Right.
There's always this sense of, I got to be the face.
So who talked you into being the face?
The previous county supervisor, actually. So
which was who?
Ellen Peary.
Okay.
So she asked me if I was interested in running for her seat, and I said no. Then she asked again, and I said no. And then then my wife and I talked, and my wife said, well, what are you afraid of? And I said that I'm going to win, actually.
Right.
Because I said I'm confident that if I put myself into this, that I'm going to win, and it's going to be a really large, I mean, just I understood the time commitment, and it's not really a 4-year thing. It's at least an 8-year thing. Like, you're trying to think about it. we didn't have a kid at the time, and she felt that, and she was right. She said, I mean, there's no such thing as a good time, like we were talking about before, for a lot of things, but this maybe was it. And sometimes the opportunity chooses you more than you have the time to really think about it.
Yeah.
So I swung, and here we are.
Yeah.
And
this is maybe the low point
12
of your.
years is what your deal is?
Yeah.
Maybe,
I did not have gray hair.
Maybe the low point of your your tenure.
I used to look. That was fun and interesting once. And,
well, I think politics is really good for getting gray hair.
Oh man, politics and kids. Man, I was in. So locally, as you may remember, I worked for the police department. I was a crime analyst and also their PIO. So I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff. I was in a local band,
Which band were you in?
It's in a band called Blueprint.
How good were you? How bad were you, other?
Well, we used to play down Pacific Avenue like everybody else,
Sure.
right? No, just kidding. No, we did really. Hey, we actually did really well. We had toured. We had music and TV and film.
Is the band disbanded?
Yeah, they're not gonna be with a dude in the suit. Come on, man. What am I gonna? They're like, I'm the biggest loser ever. Those guys.
The guy in the suit with a baby.
Hey, let's get back together.
I got a little guy who changed the diaper.
Yeah, I know.
We can take care of that. We can get you dressed up.
Yeah, so there was no bigger buzzkill than hey, Zach works for the cops. But anyway, it was great. This community that's what's cool about this community is you can be in a touring band and still work for the cops and then become an elected official. It's like not a standard process for how some people are like, I went to Harvard and Yale and like whatever, and they go up that road.
Are there people in communication with you about your future and what they? I'm sure everybody's like, Zach, throw your hat in here. Or think about this. Kind of the way that you got your current position. Somebody would say, are you interested in doing that?
A little bit. I think that. A little bit. But I think that I don't know how real that is. And someone's like, I want you to run for something else, or I want you to do something. It's a compliment. But I've also been around this enough to know like what that really, really means. It is so. There's so much luck and chance associated with whether or not you move into. The state of California, fifth largest economy in the world. It's not like you're running to be governor of. I don't know. Name some state, right?
Montana.
But a much smaller place where there are places. So I serve on the National Association of Counties Executive Board, represent, we'll say about 60,000-ish people in my position. That is more than like almost all of these county supervisors, sometimes called commissioners across the country, minus like other places in California, or other major cities. So here, the bar is just exceptionally high to even think about something like that. So I don't really even entertain it. And I really was sincere when I'm saying that this, I think that it's tough if you're gone 4 or 5 days a week and you're just doing party stuff and you come home, as Congressman Panetta does, has to do his fundraisers every week. It just seems, that's a really tough life.
He hustles.
He does.
Yeah.
He feeds off of it. He does a great job.
Your daughter's
Son.
8 years old?
Son.
Your son's 8 years
Unless
old?
you know something I
No.
I only have a son.
Can we discuss safety? Can we discuss safety in schools, especially at Aptos? There's been issues. Pajaro, Watsonville, Salinas, where your son's going to be going to high school sooner or later. Or what are you doing about the safety in the schools? Look what happened at Aptos in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
There's been some many issues there.
Well, I think that the school board made the right decision in reinstating the school resource officers that have been eliminated, the position.
So each school now has an officer at the school?
No, at the high school level specifically, yeah. And although they do some partnerships with the junior high, I understand that that is I don't know why, but I understand that it is a controversial statement. There's people who feel that the presence of law enforcement they think escalates the risk. I don't feel that way, but I recognize I'm coming from a unique place in that I literally worked for a law enforcement agency for basically a decade, so I don't. My eyes are open about all the issues in law enforcement. I'm not ignorant to that, but I would much prefer a place that had a cop stationed there than not for my own son, just to be direct.
Right.
But I do think that what's unique for my son or anybody now growing up is that you and we didn't have social media and and the way that they're interacting now.
Right.
In a very negative way with each other and shaming and various things, and that is tough. And then the addictive capability of TikTok and various other things, I think is really problematic. I don't have an answer to that. I'm trying to not allow him. As long as I can to not
To shield him from that.
Yeah, just to keep him off of the tablets and put him in every baseball camp there is and whatever it may be. But he's going to be entering into a world where his entire peer network is married to that concept. And I think that ultimately it's going to be that parents are going to have to, there's going to have to be some element back to realism. I mean, look, we got in fights. Well, I don't know about you. You look like a soft guy. But most people got in fights in like high school, but it was just a different scenario. I mean, like if we...
Easy, Tiger.
I don't know. Here, go ahead and put the glasses back on. So, I mean, to me, I think that it was just things were decided a bit differently, and I'm not like longing for the good old days, but I think that there is an escalation now, almost a romanticized view of how you engage with people. That's concerning at a very young age.
We see memes constantly of the kid on the BMX bike with a helmet cocked over, and he's going off a jump, and then it's like, this is how I grew up, and then the next one is 4 kids staring at tablets. This is how they grew up now.
I was speaking to a friend of mine who's highly ranked in the sheriff's department here. His kid goes to Aptos High. He goes, Neil, every day there's a kid at that school with a gun.
That's crazy.
At that school. Aptos High. And he goes, that's just the way of life. That's just what's going on nowadays. And he goes, there's nothing we can do about it. Are they going to be metal detectors as you walk in? I don't know what you can do, but
that's a scary thought.
That is happening right now.
That. I've had students here that said they can get not Xanax. Is that what it is? At the junior high for $5.
Right.
You know, and so it's scary times we live in. When I was in junior high, nobody was taking pills. You know,
you were smoking dope.
Yeah, it's different. So, and that's, I guess, your background. Is it challenging for you right now as, I guess, a leader to see what's going on in the schools and across the country?
Well, it's hard. I mean, it just feels like everything is hard right now, and so I can understand people being just pissed off at government, pissed off at institutions, because they are pissed off at everything. Like there's an anger toward all institutions.
There's an angst.
Yeah, but I mean, because if you talk to teachers, they'll tell you that it's a different feeling. If you talk to faith leaders, they'll say it's really weird in the churches or the synagogue. I mean, so I think there's this anti-general institutions that, you talk to somebody across the street here that's a server, and they'll say people are just interacting with them in a totally different way, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this simmering, right, that's problematic. I mean, I'm on the front line of it. I mean, if you saw my email inbox or listen to the phone calls that we get, it is very different. I mean, just the interactions we're having with people in the last couple of years versus when we first started. But I give the space to the fact that I think that that's just how people are feeling right now, this general sense of insecurity.
So people, your constituents, when they communicate with you, you're saying you see a different vibe than, say, 9 years ago when you first got involved.
Oh, I mean, 100%. And I think that there is a reason why a lot of electeds, the last election cycle, 2022, saw the greatest number of, I hope this is the correct stat, but I remember reading the greatest number of retirements of elected officials. A lot of it was the pandemic interaction that people were having, in particular at the county level. You saw a lot of public health officers also retire for the same reason. But the problem there is then the only people that fill that void are people that have a self-selection bias of either they hate the institution or they're like total zealots about changing the institution. There's a problem with that.
I think for an older person, it's tough. It's tough to be swimming upstream the whole time. Wear you out. You just get tired. And you go, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to do something else and get off that train. Start swimming downstream if I can.
I get that, but I mean, also you don't want to give up and you want to fight. So I mean, you have this time. There's times when I'm like, I just want to go walk at Seascape Beach and not have anybody know or care who I am. But on the other side, I'm like, but who's going to be fighting for the guys in power or the gals in power? And it could be that there's somebody there. I mean, I'm not like trying to make it seem like I'm some deity in this regard. But if people who take a balanced approach all back out because of these interactions, I think that we're not doing ourselves any favors for our communities at all.
Well, I mean, if you stop fighting, we all lose, and that's the whether or not.
Well, you can say that, but there's three people that want there's probably 3 or 4 people that would take your seat like right now, right? They want the opportunity.
So then the question, and maybe all 3 of them are great, but what I was saying a minute ago is that there's also this self-selection bias. There's people who hate the institution that want to run for the institution. There's people who view it as, like the pinnacle role, or they may like the title. I've dealt with that a lot in my world, where people demand to be called supervisor. I mean, they actually think they're important. It's like your position might be important. You're irrelevant. It's like you need to have anyway, you need to have relational authority, not this sort of like whatever authority, because you develop these relationships.
Yeah.
And then you hope that there is somebody in there that's like, I just really want to make sure that my kids grow up in a different environment than I've been, whatever the story is. But that's not going to be everybody that puts their name in the thing. And the differentiation is, can voters tell the difference? I mean, people have really formed opinions about me, for better or for worse. Over time, I think that they probably get worse because, I mean, just over time.
They're bad. They're bad. They're terrible.
Over time, well, because you're hanging out on social media. This is the guy that's like, I saw somebody outside my house on Nextdoor. Did you guys see it too?
And that's a great question. Do you look at social media and what people are saying about what your job performance?
Not really, actually. So the only time that I will engage in those worlds are when somebody will say that people are actually seeking help via these channels. Because, I mean, people think they're now thinking that the way that they report something is just by posting some angry statement on something. They they didn't call, they didn't email, they didn't come to a office hour or a town, there was no traditional way for you to even remedy the issue before they just complained about an issue in their community, and then everybody piles on about how terrible that issue or that individual is. You weren't even actually given a chance to fix it, right? It's sort of like the Yelp in the local restaurants, So I can't take that seriously, because to me, I think that irrespective of me being in that seat, they're going to be pissed about whoever's in the seat, right?
Yeah.
But their problem might be real, right? I mean, so I still want to address the issue, but no, I don't engage in that stuff, nor do I take it personally at all.
How do people get hold of you?
Email the best, do you think?
Email, the email comes straight to me, doesn't come to staff.
Okay.
That's Zach.friend with an H, people. Because people spell it wrong, then it goes to
Z-A-C-H.
.friend at santacruzcounty.us. 454-2200 is the office phone number. Sometimes you'll get me, sometimes you'll get one of my amazing 2 staff people, but either way, I can talk to you or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but email, I mean, I'm, pretty quick.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, but you were good. Yeah.
Well, and that's so important, because what you just said earlier about, like, it's really easy to complain. Well, instead of complaining, why don't you try to help remedy something and speak to you first about something, and then you can agree to disagree or agree to work on something.
Yeah.
I feel like people are so quick, like you said, that Nextdoor thing. My wife thinks it's so funny. She just loves to hear people's complaints because that's all they do on there is complain. And I feel like people really need to figure out the solution before they get that way.
Remember during COVID, I had a joint cheese play down there by Cafe Rio. During the COVID, I got roasted.
On Aptosia?
Oh my God, yeah.
They're still talking about you. We had a band during COVID when we rented.
Right.
Yeah, and it didn't go over well. But
it went well here. It didn't go well over there. It's pretty funny.
Well, we appreciate you coming down and being on the show, because we love sharing what people are up to in our community, and it's been too long to get you in here.
He wasn't. He was. Yeah. I felt.
I've heard rumors that there might be another skate park coming to Aptos. Have you heard anything about that?
I've definitely heard that there's still interest in expanding the number of skate parks throughout the district.
All right.
Yeah. See that answer? Got that?
I like that.
But we just got to make sure that Mr. Novak opens up his checkbook and he's watching. And I mean, in all seriousness, I don't know that you can have too many. This area, right, is really like the birth, in many respects, of certain types of cultural issues in the surf and skate culture. I mean, it's not unique, and you could debate what the birth is, but we're sitting in a store that has an iconography for a reason, and it's kind of sad how few outlet locations there actually are for people in this community, and I think that
that's true.
we can work together.
What do I always say? In this town?
Just for one kid, you want to make a difference for one kid.
No, you're born with a circle
on
one arm,
you're born with a circle on one arm, and a skateboard on the other.
And that is how it works here. You literally are like born with a surfboard and a skateboard in this town. And I always say it's so great for skateboard tourism, surfing tourism. And I feel like sometimes our community sort of forgets that. It was cool to see Dream In do a Jack O'Neill thing, and there's some things that kind of emphasize that, but we have such a great asset, and skateboarding kind of gets swept over. Every day I get travelers from all over the world who come to Santa Cruz. They didn't even know it was a town. They knew it was a brand. Right. And they trip out about it, the power, and that is how come Richard Novak was able to trademark Santa Cruz. He convinced them that he made it bigger than the town, and so it is kind of a cultural thing worldwide.
It is.
It's crazy. So I look forward to another park. I'm hoping over by where the farm restaurant used to be.
The old days?
There's a spot over there. Yeah, the old farm restaurant.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
There's something over there that's supposed to be a skate park in the future. So hopefully that'll work out.
Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you very much.
Can I not be 780 away from my next invite?
Yeah, we'll get you back.
Well, it'll be good. Zach, it'll be good to get you back because you're a big part of our demographic.
I don't know why it took so long. I have no idea why.
That's all right. No, I'm honestly, I didn't
no.
care.
Well,
Yeah.
we always say thank you for doing your job. Your job's hard, and I know. I'm sure there's times you lay in bed at night and like crap, but thank you for doing it because you're making our community better, and it takes someone like you.
I appreciate that.
To wear that hat. So
thank you. I do appreciate that.
Thank you for that, Neil. You got some stuff coming up?
Friday night.
Yes.
The return of one of Santa Cruz's most iconic bands.
Ripsy's Nickel's showing up.
Ripsy's Nickel is back.
Dude, those guys are good.
And then Sunday, you been out to Seascape yet? What I'm doing at Seascape?
No, I just get complaints about it.
Oh yeah. Are there complaints about it? I'm sure there are. The Joint Chiefs return on Sunday afternoon on the Bluff at the Seascape Hotel.
Don Carruthers plays that guitar like wow.
Yeah, he's good.
Silky smooth. Okay, well, Zach Friend, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
ZACH period FRIEND. That's your email.
At santacruzcounty.us.
At santacruzcounty.us. So, folks, before you complain, reach out and discuss. And Neil, we will see you next
Tuesday.
week.
Yeah. I think Doug the Surfing Magician is going to be here next week.
Oh, we got the Surfing Magician coming in next week?
I think so.
All right, that'll be awesome.
I'm going to get a band, too. We need some music with him.
Well, and thank
you,
everybody.
Zach's band's going to come back.
Get the band back together.
Back.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Off Lip Radio Show. We will see you next week back with the Surfing Magician,
Doug
Doug
Hopkins.
Doug Hopkins. He's great. Thank you again. Have a great night, everybody.